Every time someone disrespects you, raises their voice at you, dismisses you, ignores you, or tries to make you feel small, you react. Maybe it's subtle. Maybe you hide it well. But inside, something moves. Something shifts. And in that moment, without knowing it, you handed them control. You think staying calm means you're weak. The truth is the opposite. The moment you react, you lose. Not the argument. Not the situation. You lose the war, the internal war that determines who controls your state, your energy, your direction. And most people lose that war every single day without ever knowing it was being fought. What you're about to hear will change the way you see other people forever. Not as threats. Not as allies. But as forces. Forces you can either be moved by, or forces you can remain completely unmoved by. Once you understand what anger really is, once you see what emotional reactivity actually costs you, you cannot go back. You will never interact with another human being the same way again. This is not about peace. This is not about forgiveness. This is about power. Absolute, unshakable, psychological power over your own state, and by extension, over every interaction you will ever have. Let's begin. The invisible enemy is not the person who disrespects you. It's not your boss, your ex, your family member, the stranger who cut you off in traffic. The invisible enemy is your nervous system's conditioned response to social threat, and someone, somewhere, learned how to use it against you before you were even old enough to defend yourself. Most people walk through life as open circuits. Every insult, every dismissal, every slight, it flows straight in and triggers an immediate, automatic response. They are predictable. They are readable. And because of that, they are controllable. Weak men react. The average person performs their emotions in public and calls it authenticity. They mistake reactivity for realness. They confuse losing control with being alive. But there is a small class of people, and you can become one of them, who operate differently. Who see the provocation before it lands and choose, with surgical precision, how to respond. Or whether to respond at all. These people are not robots. They are not emotionally dead. They are simply sovereign. They decided, at some point, that no external force gets access to their internal state without permission. That permission, most people give it away for free. Every day. To everyone. You are going to take it back. 500 years ago, Niccolo Machiavelli wrote that a man who cannot control himself cannot control others. He understood something that modern psychology has only recently begun to quantify. Emotional reactivity is a form of submission. When you are provoked and you react, you are communicating to the world that you can be moved, that your state is available for manipulation. The Stoics understood this too. Marcus Aurelius, a man who commanded an empire and faced betrayal from almost every direction, wrote that you have power over your mind, not outside events. He didn't say this to sound noble. He said it because he had to survive in a world full of people trying to destabilize him. The men who have held real power throughout history, not fame, not popularity, but actual strategic dominance, they shared one trait above almost all others: they could not be emotionally hijacked. They could be threatened, insulted, isolated, betrayed. And they would respond from a place of calculation, not chaos. Neuroscience now confirms what strategy always knew. When the amygdala fires, when you feel that surge of anger, that tightening in your chest, that heat behind your eyes, your prefrontal cortex goes partially offline. Your capacity for strategic thinking, long-term planning, and social intelligence drops. You become, in that moment, genuinely less intelligent, less effective, less powerful. Anger doesn't make you dangerous. Anger makes you predictable. And predictable people can always be controlled. Here is what you are becoming. You are becoming someone who cannot be touched. Not because you don't feel, but because what you feel no longer decides what you do. You are becoming someone who looks at a person trying to destabilize you and sees a child pulling at a wire that isn't connected to anything anymore. You are becoming strategically superior, not in an arrogant, performative way, but in the quiet, absolute way of a person who has done the internal work that most people never attempt. After this, you will look at emotional reactivity in others and understand exactly what you are watching. You will see the mechanics. You will see the vulnerability. And you will be grateful, deeply, permanently grateful, that you chose differently. You will never see people the same way again. You cannot unsee this. And you would not want to. Number 1. Understand that anger is information, not instruction. Most people treat anger like a command. Someone does something. Anger appears. They obey the anger. This is not emotional intelligence. This is emotional slavery. The distinction you must burn into your psychology is this: anger tells you something, but it does not tell you what to do about it. Anger is a signal. It says, something here conflicts with your values, your boundaries, or your self-concept. That is useful data. The problem is that most people, the moment that signal fires, they skip straight to action, raised voice, harsh words, visible emotional disruption, without ever pausing to ask what the anger is actually pointing at. This is how people get manipulated. Someone learns your triggers. They press them deliberately. Your anger fires. You react. They've now moved you like a chess piece. You thought you were expressing yourself. You were performing for them. The practice is this: when anger arises, create a gap. Not suppression, a gap. A breath. A pause. A moment of internal observation where you watch the anger rather than becoming the anger. In that gap lives your power. In that gap, you decide. Not the trigger. Not the other person. You. Comment: I choose my response. Every time you create that gap, you are rewiring your nervous system. You are expanding the space between stimulus and response. And in that space, Viktor Frankl said this about survival itself: in that space lives your freedom. Command: stop obeying your triggers. Start observing them. Number 2. Detachment is not indifference. Detachment is armor. There is a cultural lie that emotional detachment is cold, broken, or sociopathic. That if you don't react strongly, you don't care deeply. This is one of the most powerful control mechanisms ever installed in the human mind, because it weaponizes your own desire for connection against your capacity for power. When you are emotionally attached to how someone treats you, when your internal state rises and falls based on other people's moods, words, or opinions, you have made yourself dependent. You have outsourced your psychological stability to people who may not deserve that kind of access, who have not earned it, who may be actively using it against you. Think about the person in your life who has the ability to ruin your day with a single sentence. Why do they have that power? Not because what they say is objectively true. Not because their opinion is fact. But because somewhere, at some level, you granted them authority over how you feel about yourself. Detachment means you revoke that authority. Not with anger, with clarity. You look at the person, you hear the words, and somewhere inside you, a quiet part of you simply does not accept the premise. You do not internalize. You do not absorb. You observe, you evaluate, and you decide what, if anything, deserves a response. This is not coldness. This is sovereignty. The difference is everything. The man who cannot be emotionally disrupted is not the man who feels nothing. He is the man who has decided what is worth feeling about, and has stopped wasting emotional energy on stimuli that do not serve him. Write this down. Other people's behavior is information about them. Your reaction is information about you. Choose what information you reveal. Number 3. Most provocations are about power, not truth. Here is something that most people never realize, and once you see it, you cannot stop seeing it. When someone tries to make you angry, when someone insults you, dismisses you, mocks you, or disrespects you, they are almost never making a factual observation. They are making a power move. Think about what happens when someone insults you in front of others. If you react, if you get visibly angry, defensive, or hurt, you have confirmed their frame. You've said, without words, your words have power over me. You matter enough to destabilize me. In social dynamics, that is a submission signal, regardless of what you actually say. The words don't matter. The state you're in when you say them does. The average person doesn't understand this. They think defending themselves is strength. But watch what happens when someone insults a person of genuine, deep confidence. The insult lands and nothing happens.
No visible shift. No defensive posturing.
Maybe a calm, measured response. Maybe silence. The person who threw the insults suddenly looks small, because the target didn't flinch. And a weapon that doesn't produce a wound loses its power immediately. This is why the most powerful response to most provocations is composed indifference. Not performed, genuine. Rooted in the internal understanding that this person, in this moment, is testing whether you can be moved. And you cannot. They want you reactive. They want you loud and defensive and off-center. That is the whole point. Your stillness is not weakness. Your stillness is the answer they did not want. Burn this into your mind. The person who needs to make you angry is already losing. Number 4. Your emotional state is your most valuable strategic asset. Everything you want, clarity, influence, execution, presence, requires that your emotional state be under your control. Not perfect. Not robotic. Controlled. Directed. Yours. When you are in a state of anger or emotional disruption, you think less clearly. You communicate less effectively. You make worse decisions. You say things you have to recover from. You take actions you have to walk back. You leak energy into situations that do not deserve it, energy you could have used to build something, to think something, to move something forward in your actual life. Most people have no idea how much they are burning. Every uncontrolled reaction is a withdrawal from a reserve you need for things that actually matter. Every time you let someone pull you into an emotional spiral, you are spending resources that belong to your real goals, your real relationships, your real work. The person you want to become, the version of you that executes, that leads, that is trusted and respected and unmovable, that person is built in the accumulated space of controlled responses. In the moments where you chose strategy over impulse, silence over noise, observation over reaction. This is compound interest for the psyche. Every controlled moment builds on the last. Every gap you create between trigger and response is a repetition in the most important training you will ever do. Comment: I move in silence. Number 5. Silence is a weapon and most people have never learned to use it. When you speak from a triggered state, you give the other person everything. You reveal what disturbs you. You reveal how far you can be pushed. You reveal your fears and your insecurities in the way you respond to the thing they said. Anger is one of the most transparent emotions that exists, and most people display it as if it costs nothing. Silence, in contrast, is unreadable. It is vast. It creates pressure without information. When you are silent in response to a provocation, the other person doesn't know what you are thinking. They don't know if you are indifferent, if you are calculating, if you are above it, or if you are about to act. That uncertainty is power. Silence forces them to sit with what they said. Silence forces them to wonder. And people who are wondering are not in control. Strategic silence is not passive. It is one of the most active choices you can make. It requires tremendous internal stability to remain quiet when everything in you wants to respond. But the man who masters silence has mastered one of the most powerful tools in social dynamics. There will be moments where saying nothing is the loudest thing you can do. Where your non-reaction communicates something that no words could match. Where your calm in the face of chaos says, I am not like you. I am not moved by this. I am operating on a different level entirely. Learn to be comfortable in silence. Learn to let other people fill the space you leave empty. Because the person who speaks first intention rarely wins it. Number 6. Rebuild your identity around internal standards, not external validation. Here is the root cause of nearly all emotional vulnerability. You care what people think. Not in a casual way, in a structural way. Your sense of who you are has been built, at least in part, on the opinions, reactions, and approval of other people. And because of that, when those opinions turn hostile, When that approval is withdrawn, when someone rejects or dismisses or belittles you, it doesn't just hurt your feelings. It threatens your identity. This is why certain words hit harder than they should. Why certain people have more power over your state than makes logical sense. Because somewhere, you gave them a vote in who you are. The work, and it is genuine, serious, unglamorous work, is to rebuild your identity on internal standards. On values you hold regardless of whether anyone sees them. On a self-concept that does not require external confirmation to stay stable. This is not arrogance. Arrogance still needs the world to agree with it. What you are building is something quieter and far more powerful, a self that is not available for destabilization by external opinion. When your identity is internally anchored, insults become information rather than injuries. Rejection becomes data rather than devastation. Someone's bad opinion of you becomes irrelevant, not because you've numbed yourself to it, but because your internal foundation does not require their agreement to remain solid. This is the long game. This is the transformation underneath all the other transformations. Command: stop outsourcing your self-concept. Take it back. Make it yours. Build it on something no one can take from you. Number 7. The people who anger you most are your clearest mirrors. This is the part most people skip because it is uncomfortable. The things that infuriate you about other people, the behaviors that trigger your deepest anger, the qualities that make you want to react most violently, they are almost always pointing at something unresolved inside you. This is not an excuse for the person who provoked you. Their behavior may be genuinely wrong, manipulative, or harmful. But your emotional intensity in response to it, your particular fury, your specific wound, that is yours. That is information about where you are still raw, still unresolved, still vulnerable. The man who has done his internal work does not have the same triggers as the man who hasn't. Because the resolved wound does not ache when it's touched. The work of genuine emotional sovereignty requires looking at your strongest reactions and asking, with honesty, with courage, what this is really about. What belief is being threatened? What old pain is being activated? What version of yourself is being exposed? This is not therapy in the soft sense. This is surgical self-analysis. It is the process of finding every wire that someone can pull to move you, and one by one, choosing to disconnect them. Not to feel nothing. To feel clearly, without distortion, without historical weight contaminating present reality. The man who knows himself completely is very difficult to manipulate. Because you can only be controlled through what you haven't examined. Write this down. Know yourself completely. Leave no shadow for someone else to exploit. You are nearing the end of this. And if you have stayed with this until now, something in you already knows this is true. Something in you has been waiting for this language. For this framing. For the permission to stop being moved by people who do not deserve that power. But permission means nothing unless you act on it. And action requires something that most people are unwilling to do. It requires the death of who you were. The version of you that got angry at every provocation, that version has served its purpose. It protected you once. It was a strategy for a time in your life when you didn't have better ones. But it has become the cage. It has become the thing that keeps you reactive, predictable, open to manipulation, and energetically depleted in every interaction where someone knows how to push. That version of you must die. Not slowly. Not partially. Completely. You execute the weakness. Not with violence, with decision. A clear, irreversible decision that you are done being a person whose internal state is available to anyone with the right words. Done being a person who gives away strategic information through emotional display. Done performing your pain in public. Done letting the unworthy have access. The old version of you asked for permission to feel secure. It waited for people to treat you well before it would relax. It changed based on the temperature of the room. It was controlled by the group. It sought approval because it was built on approval. That person is gone. Say it with me. That person is gone. What replaces them is not a harder version of the same structure. It is something fundamentally different. A person whose foundation is internal. whose state belongs to them, whose presence in a room is stable regardless of what the room does. A person who can be in the storm and remain still, not because they feel nothing, but because they have decided that feeling is not the same as following. This is not a temporary mindset shift. This is not a week of motivation that fades when life returns to normal. This is a structural renovation of how you relate to your own psychology. It takes time. It takes repetition. It takes the willingness to catch yourself reacting and to choose, again and again, until the choice becomes the reflex. But it is real. It is available to you. And the moment you make it your actual practice, not your aspiration, your practice, the world begins to look different. People begin to look different. You see the triggers they lay and you watch yourself not take them. You feel the pull of the old pattern and you choose otherwise. And slowly, permanently, irrevocably, you become someone that cannot be shaken. Subscribe if you are ready to build what cannot be broken. There is more where this came from. This is who you are now. Not someone who never feels the pressure, someone who feels it and does not move. Not someone who never faces provocation, someone who faces it and sees through it. Not someone who asks permission to be unaffected, someone who simply is. You are psychologically sovereign. You are strategically present. You are unmoved. The only person who controls your state is you. Comment: I am the stillness inside the storm.